So I'm going to try to re-stream this again. Apparently I did stream it correctly the first time. And you do have to select individual parts and create a collection, and then copy the pose and transfer the pose to the other side. I have been researching a few different ways of doing bipeds over this week. So I haven't quite uploaded as much as I needed to, with it being just a couple of weeks away from where the class ends and whatnot. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this bone. I guess I should just re-talk everything. So today I'm going to be doing the biped and the cat rig. I'm not going to be doing envelopes until I do a little bit more research on how exactly to make the envelopes most efficient. I'm about halfway through that video, but unfortunately, since I'm creating my own YouTube video, I don't want to be streaming somebody else's content from the people that I'm learning it from. So I'm going to be doing the research, and then I'm going to be coming back and recording the video. So that's what I've been doing this week, and I'm going to be covering a range of topics today, from the biped to the quadruped, or four-footed biped as the competency says. I'm going to be covering hair and fur modifier, and then I'm going to be covering, I don't have my paper over here. Where did my paper go? Things keep moving in my house. So, I'm going to be covering the two-footed biped, the four-footed biped, and then I'm going to be covering the rigging workflow, building bone systems, setting bone parameters, and making linked objects into bone system, as well as creating the inverse kinematic systems. And this is one way of doing a model where you can use kinematics. The other way is the cat rig, but the cat rig, the inverse kinematics are attached to the legs, and the forward kinematics are attached to the arms. And I believe that's the same with biped when you're animating it. So I'm going to show both of those things. I'm going to quickly, well, my own version of quickness of recreating this hand and then copying its posture to the opposite side so I don't have to rig it twice. It's simpler to just copy and paste one side and make sure you're doing one side. Works best when the entire model is in symmetry, and currently this model is. My future model that I've been working on the face and everything so it doesn't look as ugly, I have gotten it to a point where it's not as ugly in my terms. I have definitely learned that I do not like to model faces. They're just a pain. So, but everything's a learning lesson, and I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. So the first thing you need to make sure is that you're on the local coordinate system when you're adjusting anything in any of these viewports for the biped. And there's something else I also needed to say, and as soon as I remember it, I will record that as well. Yes, what I also remember is in order to get the polygons, the triangles, the edges, and the vertices to show up in your active viewport, you go to Views and then Viewport Configuration. And for whatever reason, okay. And then from here, you'll go to Statistics, and you'll select which things you want. And from there, you can set the statistics to show in the active view. So like if I deselect that and click Apply, it takes it off of this one, and then I go ahead and hit OK. You typically want it on your orthographic one so you can see your model in all the other windows. So at that point, you select this one, you select the viewport configuration, show to statistics, click Apply, and then it stays on this. So every time you select something, it'll show how many of every object is being selected and manipulated. So in this one, I'm going to just quickly, like I said, move this, make it to where it is supposed to be lined up. And you can do it to each individual joint, which is really nice. So you can bend it a little bit, make it act like it's actually bending inside of your finger or whatnot, and get the type of pose and hand gesture you're wanting. And so I also need to mess with this one as well. So I'm going to arrange this a little bit. And you want to make sure that you're not sticking too incredibly far out of your structure like this finger is, probably because I bent it forward a little bit. So I want it to bend. So I have it turned a little too far right now, because I definitely don't want it to bend that direction. No, this one. The right spot, okay. The other thing is if the hand isn't quite lined up where you want it to be, you can always just move it and make it bend the way you want it to go. This is the same for both the biped and the quadruped. Basically, when you take a quadruped, I'm going to show how to make that here in a momentarily, as soon as I figure out exactly how I want these fingers positioned and whatnot. So that looks good to me. It's, yeah, good for me. So at this point, I already have my model. It's selected and it's been frozen in place. So I'm going to go ahead and select these objects. I'm going to switch back over to my select object. I'm going to push Alt and I'm going to remove these. And I'm going to make sure that I have my clavicle and my upper arm, my lower arm, my wrist where I want it with my hand. So my wrist bone is actually kind of high, after I've viewed a little bit of these other modeling tutorials, and so it may or may not bend the way I want it to. On the perspective or orthographic, it looks correct. Same with the standard, but on the side it looks like it's a little bit high. Typically I'd want my wrist bone to be down here, because the front of your pivot point wrist, when you're doing these, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to your pivot points and trying to make it bend realistically. So if I select this object, is this where I would want my wrist to actually bend, is what I'm going at. So now scroll out. Like I said, I would select that half of my object, make sure I select the bones that I don't want to copy, uncheck that, go over to motion, and I will be coming down to here in posture and creating a collection. The collection, I'm going to rename it to right. Of course, I can't type today again. Right sides. Right side. Okay. Hit enter. That's saved. Now you can go copy posture. And at this point, you can go paste posture opposite. And when you do that, it automatically lines everything up. It's a wonderful tool. All the bones on the little toes line up. All the bones on the hands should line up because everything is symmetrical right now. So if I rotate this, everything should be lined up the same way on this hand as it is on that hand. And everything else should be lined up as well. So everything, that looks pretty good to me. And so this biped is now set up correctly. So I'll go ahead and I will say I want to select the entire biped this time. And I want to create a new collection. So I'm going to click the new collection, and I'm going to call this collection entire. There we go. And then I'm going to say that I want to copy this posture. Can't quite remember if I can copy this into another thing. Probably not. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm actually going to save this file by exporting it. Export selected. I'm going to change this to a 3S object, and I'm going to call this Biped Skelly. That's what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to click for my export. I don't want it saved there, so I'm going to go back into character modeling, to stream, A6, and I'm going to call this Biped. And I'm going to go ahead and save that into that area. Preserving the coordinates. That's very important. Click OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Save. I'm going to save this file as Biped, and I'm going to say Skelly _ done. So I have that file saved. Now I'm going to go into the next file, which is the character that I've been working on for a while. I've already saved it into day 6.1, and I'm going to build the cat rig on that one. So we're going to jump over to that model. I'm going to say one or more objects are currently isolated, and the face doesn't quite look as ugly to me comparatively to what it used to look like when I first started. Yes, it has no hair on it, and there's a reason for that, because the amount of RAM that I had, I couldn't run the live feed on the hair without it running into issues. So I decided I was going to make multiple files. I also have positioned this one at 0, 0, so I'm going to go ahead and import my Skelly just to see if this one would work with the previous Skelly, and see if it's possible to transfer Biped. Click Open, click OK, and actually looks like it lined up relatively well, surprisingly. The toes are a bit off. Doesn't quite look like it selected my legs in the proper. Okay, so I'm not going to copy the file. I'll just start with the cat rig. So when building a cat rig, you want to make sure that you save constantly and often, because if you don't save constantly and often, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I'm trying to find my helpers. Cat objects. Cat parent. So I want to make sure. I'm going to build my cat model out. And then I'm going to move it. I'm going to make sure that these are all at zeros, which I can right click and create zeros. And now everything's at a 0, 0, 0, 0, which is exactly where we want it. So with this one, I need to make sure that with my biped, it's lined up at 0, 0, 0, 0. And it looks like it is according to how I wanted my pivot point set up. I guess the pivot point could go a little bit further, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that right now. Effect pivot only. Right click in the area you want it to go in, and then we're just going to adjust this and move that to right about center mass. Of my feet and my body. Okay, right about the center of the feet. And I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And I know that my pivot point right now goes into his feet a little bit. That's because his feet are angled. So the other thing you could do is you could adjust the pivot point to be right at the bottom of his feet, which is probably the best thing to do. And once that pivot point is where you want it to be, aligned to the world, you could center it to the object, and then you just Z it out. And then at that point, you have your pivot where you want it to. Take it off pivot. You're going to select this object. You're going to make sure everything is at zeros because everything needs to match when you're modeling. So now my cat rig is lined up, and so is my person up above it. So then we're going to go over here, and we're going to say create pelvis. And it'll pop pelvis in the middle of my creature, or my human, I guess. And oh yeah, one other thing I might want to do is you go to Object Properties, click See Through, and then I'm going to freeze the object, and I'm making sure it's not checked, frozen in gray, so I can see exactly where I'm going. And I'm going to click OK. Now everything's frozen, and I won't be able to select that model, and I'll be able to just model this pelvis where I want him to actually be able to bend. So shirt. Okay, so we want to move this up to right above the shirt. I'm going to try to get it to match up in length and width. So I'm going to increase that width a little bit. And I'm going to name this instead of hub, I'm going to name this pelvis, because that's what it is. And then after that point, I can click Add Leg, and it'll automatically show this leg. So before, so my leg, I'm going to want to make sure, that I adjust the foot section of it first. And it has to line up with where my foot would actually be. And I'm trying to line up the ankle. And I want to make sure that this pivot point, Control Z, this pivot point is well within my foot. And then I'm going to adjust each one of these things to make it match up for each side, and then I'll move on further and define that. You want to make sure that your platform is at 0, so that when it touches down, that measures that the foot is actually touching down. And then you can adjust each one of these other things. If you want to, you can add an edit poly modifier and make it shaped like a foot, but it doesn't really matter as much on this as it does on the biped type model. Also on here, you can add your digits. I do have 5 digits for 5 different toes, so I'm going to go ahead and hit 5 on here. I'm going to hit enter, and it'll automatically add those in. It gives me 2 bones per, and currently I believe my toes should have 3 digits. So I'd select this first digit here, and it'll tell me how many bones there are. I can hit 3, and it'll automatically make them into 3. At this point, I would want to move up. I want to double click, and it'll select all of them, and then I can move them to where my first bone would actually be on my foot. So I want to rotate this a little bit so I can actually see where everything is. And I'm going to move this and line it up kind of with like the midpoint of my toe. And it's still attached to the foot despite the foot being way back there. It actually is still attached, and I'm making sure that my ankle bone is attached with the ankle. And then as for these individual bones, you can select the individual ones and change the width and the depth and all that. So I'm going to shrink them down a little bit so they'll kind of fit more within the model. And then I'm going to move that point to just about the middle of each of those toes. And then I'll come back. Always make sure you adjust your first one and then your last one. Just because I want to encompass the entire toe, so I'm going to make it a little wider. That's the depth and the length. There we go. And make sure the toe is entirely covered. And I think that's about where I want it to bend, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. And I realized that the toe, the beginning of the toe on the last one is a little bit further down, so I'm going to have to adjust that first one as well to make it where I need it to be to actually do the bend that I need it to do. So I'm actually going to shrink this width back down so I can see this toe. And I'm going to move these in accordance to where I think that the toe should bend from. Okay. And I'm trying to encompass the mesh that should have kind of a little bit of a bend to these since they're individual toes and whatnot. So should encompass the toe. I'm trying to get the depth to where it's actually covering the mesh that I need it to move without taking up too much extra of the mesh. I don't quite want it to bend all cockeyed on these things. We're going to do that. So now we're going to select this. We're going to tell it we want 3 bones. And then we're going to double click, select the whole chain, move this over to the next toe. I'm going to move it slightly back so I can adjust everything where I need it to be. And once I get that top one aligned, I'll make sure the bottom one's aligned as well. So both of them are aligned to where I think they need to be. So I'm going to need to select this individual mesh, move it slightly back so I'm encompassing the back of the toe, and then I'm going to need to move the one in front of that to kind of even it out in between. And then I'm going to shrink its depth on all 3 of these where it's just controlling that toe. And then as for this, it needs to be adjusted forward to where that joint would be. And then same with this one. It needs to be adjusted forward so it covers that toe. And I'm going to be going on to this one. The width is smaller, so I'm going to shrink that width down. And then make sure that I'm selected on both of those. Okay. Oh, somehow I got the one behind it. Okay. Got that one. Bring that forward. And then we're going to adjust that to the middle of both of those. We're just going to eyeball it. We have for all of them. And that looks like it's pretty good. Okay. So now I'm going to select the back one here. I'm going to give it 3 bones because I want 3. And then I'm going to adjust the depth and bring that shrunk down a little bit more. And then we're going to bring the width in a little bit more. And that one looks like it's good all the way to the back. So I'm going to make sure I select the middle bone. Move it forward to where the bend point should be. And select the front one. And move that to where it just covers the front of that toe. And finally, the 5th one. So double click again, move it forward. We don't quite want it to cover the entire thing yet. And then zoom in, adjust it. And there are benefits to using each type of thing, either biped or a cat rig. But the cat rig videos that I've been watching and whatnot make it seem like it's a whole lot easier to use cat rig than it is to use the biped. Even though the biped is the most commonly used one. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down, zoom in a little bit, make sure that I'm actually getting my toe all the way. This one's toe goes a little bit the opposite direction. So for this one, I'm going to move it slightly back that direction. And when I go to the front one, I still have it only on 2 bones, don't I? So I need to select this back one. And I'm going to say I want 3 bones so that they're all even. Select this. I'm going to move it forward to where I think the toe should be. And then I'm going to move this one forward to where it covers the toe. Then I'm going to rotate this and make sure that all of my toes and all of the bones and everything are all lined up to where I think that they should be. Now notice my toe bones go way back here, so I'm actually going to end up selecting all 5, no, not that one, all 5, and I'm going to end up moving them forward. So they're all not quite as far back on those knuckles. Okay. And for this end one, I have to move this again because I didn't quite get that where I wanted it. I gotta drop this length. Okay. That looks pretty good for the toes. Rotate this back around. And if you notice, my leg is bending all kinds of crazy right now. But that's okay, because we're just about to adjust this. Zoom this out. My knee is all kinds of crazy out here on the side. I'm going to move our hip to where it would look like an actual hip. That's probably pretty good. Just so I could shrink the width of it down a little bit, be able to see a little bit better. And I believe it's the depth, yeah. Depth from the width. But I increase that width again just to match up. So I could go and I could add an edit poly to any one of these objects. I'm just going to do it to this one real quick. So I could actually map out how I want this leg to go and line up, where it's a little bit wider at the top, kind of shrunk in at the bottom here. And I accidentally selected off of it somehow. Okay. So I want that to be there. And this side I want it to be, for some reason it only selected one again. There it goes. And I can go to edge. It's kind of the shape of it. Then I'll go back to here and I'll tell it to collapse all. Nope, not collapse all. I need collapse 2. All right. So rather than doing that, I'm just going to remove the edit poly, because I haven't quite played around with that just yet. So on this one, we have bones 2. This is my left leg, and it already named it L leg. So I'm going to name this L calf, because I want to keep it separated. And then I'm going to name this one although I think the problem is, yeah, it's just going to name Oh, that's why. And my naming and all this. Okay. I'm going to name this L5. Enter. We're going to select this one. We're going to name it LCAF. Enter. And then this one will be ankle. Yeah, ankle's fine. Then we're going to go for this bone 1. They call it digit 5. It's actually going to be pink E, or L pinky, so that I can keep track between left and right pinkies. And this one will be L, I guess I'll call it ring, because it would be where the ring would be. This one would be L mid. This one would be L, I guess I should do toe, and then name L toe. And this one will be toe big. And then pinky and all that. Left leg, calf. This is my hip. So actually my leg would be bending from back here somewhere, which in turn would make it clear my knee would be bending right there. And I want to make sure that my knee is actually lined up with my knee on this. And that would be bending slightly forward. Of course, the way I'm standing isn't quite slightly forward, but and segments, I'm going to have it 2 because it kind of twists a little bit. Same with this, I'm going to have it having 2 segments. So now my left knee should be all lined up and ready to go. And at this point, I can just click, and all my toes and everything are all lined up. And that's good enough for now. So then I'm going to go back and I'm going to select my pelvis. I'm going to go ahead and hit add leg, and it'll automatically add the second leg, and everything will be lined up correctly. I can go over here and I can rename this to R, so I can keep track of each individual toe. And R. And I'm just going to change these all to R, so I can keep track of which one is which on which side. And R. This one's name was ankle. I need to actually have L ankle on there. And then this one needs to be R ankle. This one needs to be R leg and R leg. Okay, so R. No, R leg is correct. Leg. The name of it is actually R calf and R calf. This one is L thigh, R thigh now. That should be R thigh, and then this one will be L thigh. Okay, so legs are now rigged. So at this point, going to need to make a spine. So I click this and I tell it to add me a spine. And I have to adjust each of these bones to that. The reason why you adjust the bottom one first and not the shoulder first. Or you adjust the shoulder and the bottom one first and not the middle until you've finished adjusting the hand. You usually will add, when you do the hand, you'll add the number of digits so that you can tell which direction the hand is facing, so you don't end up rigging your hand backwards, and then you'll shrink it back down to 0 and adjust the hand and then add the digits back and align them and everything else. And then after you do that, then you'll add the other arm and it'll automatically add it, same spots and everything else. It's really nice. Obviously, my eyeballs are not in the guy's head right now, but we'll figure that out and fix that in a second, because I just realized that they're just kind of sticking out and floating in midair right now in front of his head. Yeah. Anyway, we'll fix that in a minute, or I'll fix it in a minute. What I just realized is it names it cat rig right leg, and I don't need right toe, whatever it is. I just need it to be toe pointer or middle or whatever, so that I can tell it's on the right leg or whatnot. I'm used to naming in biped mode, and so this cat rig thing is kind of interesting, kind of fun. So this one will be bicep, this one will be forearm, so it's going to be hand or palm, that works. This one will be thumb, zoom out here, make sure I'm getting the right fingers. This one is pointer. Middle, ring, and pinky. And now that those are all lined up and everything else, click on the top one, click Add Arm. It'll automatically mirror it, and everything should be in the right, correct spots again. So everything's put into there. These should already be named thumb, which means that they should already be named forearm and everything else. Forearm, bicep, and all that's correct. And this one is collarbone, which is perfect. So now I have all of his collarbones, all of his regular bones. So then we click on the top one, and we're going to click Add Spine again. And when we click on this first object, we're going to make this have 2 bones. And I'm going to name this one neck. This one is going to be called head. Oh, I just moved that one. Front. Shrink this bone down again. I might give it 3 bones. Let's raise this up a little bit so I can get to that 3rd one. Shrink that down, shrink that down. I should have 3 individual bones. Move this one. Move these over here. And then I'm going to click this first one, rotate it. Next one, rotate it slightly back. And then zoom in so I'm not stuck on this spinning wheel. Then I'll figure out how to get this one down to the correct size. So my head, and the length of my head. And I'm going to move the head up to the base of my spine, or the base of my head, because that's where the spine connects to. And at this point, I'm going to rotate each of these to get them where I need them to be. This one's kind of short, so I do want to kind of make it a little longer. So this one's a little too long. Down, down, down. Rotate. And then at this point, I'm going to add a bone, and I'm going to select said bone. I'm going to name this one jaw. I'm going to move this one over here, pivot down like this, move it back over to here, and then I'm going to make that a little wider. Actual jaw. Wider, a little shorter. Move that right there. Then I don't have a tongue on this guy, so I'm not going to add a tongue thing. If I have time, I'll model a tongue and I'll model teeth. But being on the shortened time frame that I have, currently I'm not going to do that. I will, however, move his eyes back in socket because that just looks weird. So I do need to unfreeze all, select this, and unmake it see-through. Right click. Select both of those again. And I'm going to freeze those in place as well. Okay, and that should mean that the cat rig is done. So I will go ahead and save this. Oh wow, I haven't been saving it all. Bad idea. Okay, saved as day 6.2. Cat rig is done. The biped is done.